Daniel Warren signed the divorce papers with a smirk, his pen scratching across the document that would free him from his wife Emma, the woman he'd called too fat to be seen with anymore. So he could finally marry his mistress, the stunning Victoria Blake, who stood beside him in their lawyer's office, her designer heels clicking as she leaned down and actually spat on Emma's trembling hands. Daniel laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the mahogany walls, completely unaware that just 3 hours earlier, Emma had received a call informing her that her estranged uncle's billion-dollar empire, hotels, real estate, tech companies spanning 14 countries, now belonged entirely to her. Emma said nothing, her plus-size frame shaking not from humiliation, but from the volcanic rage building inside her. Because while Daniel drained their joint account of every cent to fund his wedding to Victoria, while he handed her the invitation to their ceremony with a mocking grin, while Victoria's spittle still dripped from her fingers, Emma was already planning something that would crush them both forever. But what could a broke, divorced, supposedly broken woman do to a man who'd stolen everything and a mistress who'd humiliated her so completely? What did Emma know about Daniel and Victoria that they'd kept hidden, even from each other? And when Emma walked into their wedding 4 weeks later, why did Victoria's face drain of all color? And why did Daniel drop to his knees, his carefully constructed world shattering in an instant? The mahogany desk gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of Patterson and Associates, the kind of law firm that smelled of leather-bound books and broken promises. Emma Warren sat in the rigid chair, her fuller figure pressed against the armrests, her fingers clutching the divorce papers that represented 12 years of marriage crumbling into dust. Across from her, Daniel Warren, tall, still handsome at 42, with his salt and pepper hair and the jawline she'd once traced with adoring fingers, signed his name with theatrical flourish, as if he were autographing a bestseller rather than ending their life together. Victoria Blake stood behind him, her manicured hand resting possessively on his shoulder. She was everything Emma wasn't, tall, willowy, with platinum blonde hair that cascaded in perfect waves, wearing a crimson dress that probably cost more than Emma's monthly grocery budget. Victoria's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. "Finally," Victoria purred, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Free at last." Emma's attorney, Harold Mitchum, an older gentleman with kind eyes hidden behind wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mrs. Warren, you don't have to sign today. We can review the terms again. Perhaps negotiate." "She'll sign," Daniel interrupted, not even looking at Emma. "She knows she's got nothing. No job, no money of her own, living off my success for a decade. This is generous, really. I could have left her with nothing." Emma's hands trembled as she reached for the pen. 3 hours ago, her phone had rung. The voice on the other end belonged to Montgomery Ashworth III, senior partner at Ashworth, Berkeley & Stone, informing her that her uncle, Theodore Blackwood, whom she'd met exactly twice in her life at family funerals, had passed away in his London estate. Uncle Theodore, the black sheep of her mother's family, who'd built a fortune in hotel chains, commercial real estate, and tech startups across Europe, Asia, and North America, had left everything to Emma, his only living relative. The estate was valued at $3.2 billion. Emma hadn't told Daniel, hadn't told anyone. "Sign the papers, fatty," Victoria said suddenly, leaning forward, her breath hot against Emma's ear. Then with deliberate malice, Victoria hawked and spat directly onto Emma's hands. The warm spittle landed on Emma's fingers, dripping onto the unsigned divorce papers. The room fell into shocked silence. Even Harold gasped. Daniel laughed, actually laughed, a deep belly laugh that made his shoulders shake. "God, Victoria, you're perfect," he wheezed between guffaws. "Absolutely perfect." Emma looked up slowly, meeting Daniel's eyes for the first time that afternoon. She saw nothing there, no regret, no shame, not even the ghost of the man who'd once promised to love her in sickness and health, for better or worse. That man had died somewhere between his promotion to regional sales director and his affair with his secretary, Victoria, which had started 14 months ago at the company Christmas party. She signed the papers. Her signature was steady, controlled. Emma Warren became Emma Blackwood again in that moment. though no one in that room knew the weight that name now carried. "One more thing," Daniel said, sliding another document across the desk. "The joint account. I need you to sign off on a transfer. Wedding expenses, you understand. Victoria and I are getting married in 4 weeks at the Grandview Estate. Big affair. You wouldn't understand luxury like that." Emma looked at the transfer form. $78,412. Every penny they had. Every penny she'd saved from her part-time bookkeeping jobs. Every birthday check from her late grandmother. Every tax return. Every anniversary gift converted to cash. Daniel had already signed his portion. "Daniel, this is highly irregular," Harold began, but Emma cut him off. "It's fine." Emma signed. She didn't need that money anymore. She had 3.2 billion reasons not to care. Daniel snatched up the papers, his grin triumphant. "You know what, Emma? I'm feeling generous. Here." He pulled a cream-colored envelope from his jacket pocket, embossed with gold lettering. "An invitation to our wedding. I want you to see what a real woman looks like in a wedding dress. Maybe it'll motivate you to finally lose some of that weight." Victoria's laughter was like breaking glass. "Oh, please come. I'd love to see you squeeze into a church pew." Emma took the invitation. The Grandview Estate. Saturday, 4 weeks from today, 2 o'clock ceremony. "I'll be there," Emma said quietly. Something in her tone made Victoria's laughter falter, but Daniel was already ushering his fiancée toward the door, his hand on the small of her back, whispering promises about champagne and celebration. Harold watched them leave, then turned to Emma, his face creased with concern. "Emma, my dear, are you all right? What they did, what they said, it's unconscionable. We can still fight this. That account transfer might be contested, and the way they've treated you—" "Harold," Emma interrupted gently, "I need you to do something for me. I need you to make some calls. There's an estate I've just inherited, and I'm going to need a very good team." Harold's confusion was evident, but Emma was already standing, wiping Victoria's spit from her hands with a tissue, her mind racing ahead to the next 4 weeks. She had plans to make, a wedding to attend, and a life to reclaim. As she walked out of Patterson and Associates into the gray afternoon, Emma allowed herself the smallest smile. Daniel thought he'd won. Victoria thought she'd humiliated her. They had no idea that the woman they just destroyed was about to rise from those ashes as someone neither of them could have imagined. The rain started as Emma reached her car, a 12-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. She sat in the driver's seat, not starting the engine, just breathing. Her phone buzzed, Montgomery Ashworth III again, with details about properties, portfolios, board meetings that required her immediate attention. Emma closed her eyes and remembered something her grandmother had told her once, years ago, before the dementia took her mind. "Emma girl, revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at a wedding, where everyone can watch you feast." She started the car. She had 4 weeks. 4 weeks to transform, to prepare, to become the woman she was always meant to be. Not for Daniel, not for Victoria, for herself. The first stop was Ashworth, Berkeley & Stone's downtown office, where Montgomery Ashworth III waited with documents that would change everything. The second stop would be a place Daniel had mocked her about for years, the gym where Emma had secretly been working with a trainer for the past 6 months. Losing weight not because Daniel demanded it, but because she wanted to feel strong again. The third stop would be somewhere she'd never had the courage to go before, the Bellamy Towers, the luxury high-rise where penthouses started at $4 million. Because Emma Blackwood wasn't going to show up at Daniel Warren's wedding as his discarded, broken ex-wife. She was going to show up as a billionaire heiress who just purchased the very estate where they were getting married, and she was going to make sure that when Daniel and Victoria said "I do," they'd be saying it on property they could never afford, at a venue Emma now owned, surrounded by secrets that Emma had spent 4 weeks uncovering. The rain fell harder as Emma drove through the city streets, past the apartment she'd shared with Daniel, past the Italian restaurant where he'd proposed 12 years ago, past the life she was leaving behind. Tomorrow, Montgomery Ashworth III would wire the first installment of her inheritance into a new account. Tomorrow, Emma would meet with private investigators, fashion consultants, nutritionists, and attorneys who specialized in corporate acquisitions. But tonight, Emma went to the small apartment she'd rented 2 weeks before the divorce, anticipating this moment. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at the woman she'd become. Yes, she'd gained weight during the marriage. 60 pounds of comfort food and suppressed sadness, of skipped gym sessions to make Daniel's dinner, of eating her loneliness when he worked late with Victoria. But she'd also gained something else: perspective, strength, a quiet fury that burned cold and patient. Emma picked up her phone and dialed the number Montgomery Ashworth had given her. "This is Emma Blackwood," she said when he answered. "I want to purchase the Grandview estate tomorrow. Whatever the asking price, double it. I want it done before the end of the week." Montgomery's cultured British accent carried surprise. "Ms. Blackwood, the Grandview estate is valued at $42 million. That's rather impulsive. Then make it $84 million. I want those owners to have no reason to refuse. I want the sale closed, the deed transferred, and the current bookings honored, especially the wedding scheduled for 4 weeks from now." A pause, then, "Consider it done, Ms. Blackwood." Emma hung up and opened the wedding invitation. Cream cardstock, gold embossing, pretentious calligraphy that Victoria had probably spent hours selecting. The wording made her stomach turn. "Together with joyful hearts, Victoria Ann Blake and Daniel James Warren request the honor of your presence at their wedding celebration." Emma set the invitation on her kitchen counter, propped against a coffee mug. She stared at it for a long moment, then pulled out her laptop. If she was going to attend this wedding, she needed to know everything. Everything about Victoria Blake, about Daniel's company, about the secrets they thought were safely buried. The night stretched long as Emma worked, her fingers flying across the keyboard, making calls to the investigators Montgomery recommended, requesting background checks and financial audits. What she discovered in those early morning hours would have made a lesser woman weep. But Emma Blackwood, formerly Emma Warren, wasn't a lesser woman anymore. She was a woman with $3.2 billion, a 4-week deadline, and a wedding invitation that felt less like mockery and more like an opportunity. By dawn, Emma had a plan, and Daniel Warren had no idea his entire world was about to implode. The next morning arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind that makes people believe in fresh starts. Emma stood outside the towering glass building that housed Ashworth, Berkeley & Stone, her heart hammering beneath her thrift store blazer. The same blazer Daniel had once called frumpy when she'd worn it to his company dinner. She wouldn't be wearing it much longer. Montgomery Ashworth III's office occupied the entire 42nd floor. The man himself was nothing like Emma expected. Younger, maybe 50, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that assessed her the moment she walked through the mahogany doors. His handshake was firm, professional, and somehow reassuring. "Ms. Blackwood," he said, gesturing to a leather chair that probably cost more than her car. "I'm terribly sorry for your loss, though I understand you and Mr. Theodore Blackwood weren't close." "We weren't," Emma admitted, settling into the chair. "I met him twice. Once at my grandfather's funeral when I was 7, once at my mother's funeral when I was 19. He sent Christmas cards. That was the extent of our relationship." Montgomery opened a folder thick with documents. "Your uncle was a fascinating man. Brilliant, ruthless in business, notoriously private. He never married, never had children. According to his will, executed 6 months before his death, he'd been watching you, Ms. Blackwood. He hired investigators, reviewed your life, your choices, your character." Emma's breath caught. "He was watching me?" "Indeed, he was particularly impressed by your loyalty to your husband despite his repeated infidelities, your work ethic despite having no formal degree, your kindness to your elderly neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, whom you helped with groceries every week. He noted in a personal letter," Montgomery pulled out a cream envelope, "that you reminded him of his own mother, your great-grandmother, whom he described as possessed of quiet dignity and steel beneath softness." Emma's hands trembled as she took the letter. Her uncle's handwriting was precise, almost architectural. "My dear Emma," it read, "we are strangers bound by blood and little else. But I have watched you endure marriage to a mediocre man with extraordinary grace. I have watched you sacrifice your dreams so he could pursue his. I have watched you shrink yourself to fit into spaces too small for your spirit. When you read this, I will be gone, but my legacy, our family's legacy, will be yours. Not because you are my only living relative, but because you alone have the character to wield great wealth without it corrupting you. Build something beautiful with what I leave you, and never, ever let small-minded people make you feel small again. With hope for your future, Uncle Theodore. Emma's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. She'd mourned her uncle when the call came, mourned a man she never really knew, but now she mourned the relationship they could have had, the conversations they'd never share, the gratitude she couldn't express. The estate, Montgomery continued gently, consists of the following: Blackwood International Hotels, with properties in 14 countries, valued at approximately $1.8 billion. Commercial real estate holdings across North America and Europe, valued at $750 million. Technology investments and startup acquisitions, valued at $400 million. And liquid assets, stocks, bonds, and personal property, totaling roughly $250 million. Your net worth, Ms. Blackwood, is approximately $3.2 billion. You are now one of the wealthiest women in the country. The words hung in the air between them. Emma tried to process them, but they seemed abstract, unreal. Yesterday, she'd been signing away her last $78,000. Today, she was a billionaire. I want to purchase the Grandview estate, Emma said, her voice steady despite the surrealism of the moment. I want it done quickly, quietly, and I want the current owner to believe they're getting a phenomenal deal from an anonymous buyer. Can you make that happen? Montgomery's eyes gleamed with something like approval. The Grandview estate. That's where your ex-husband is getting married, if I'm not mistaken. My team did a preliminary background check on Daniel Warren as a matter of course. What did you find? Besides the obvious affair with his secretary? Montgomery pulled out another folder. Financial irregularities at his company, Carter and Associates. It appears Mr. Warren has been embezzling funds for approximately 8 months. Small amounts, cleverly hidden, but there nonetheless. He's been using the money to finance his lifestyle with Ms. Blake. Designer clothes, jewelry, the wedding itself. His salary couldn't cover it. Emma absorbed this information with grim satisfaction. And Victoria Blake? Ah, Ms. Blake. Montgomery's expression darkened. More interesting still, born Victoria Ann Henderson in a trailer park in Nevada, she reinvented herself completely at age 22. New name, new history, new credentials. The bachelor's degree in business administration she claims on her resume doesn't exist. She never attended Stanford. She worked at a massage parlor in Reno before moving east and assuming her new identity. Emma leaned forward. Does Daniel know? I doubt it. Ms. Blake has been very careful. But there's more. She's done this before. Targeted successful married men, seduced them, pushed for divorce, then cleaned them out. She's been engaged 3 times in the past 6 years. Each engagement ended with substantial gifts that she kept. She's a professional. Your ex-husband, is her current mark. The pieces fell into place in Emma's mind like a puzzle solving itself. Victoria hadn't pursued Daniel for love. She'd pursued him for money, money he'd stolen, money that was about to disappear the moment Carter and Associates discovered his embezzlement. I want everything, Emma said quietly. Every detail about Victoria's past, every transaction Daniel's made, every secret they're hiding. And I want the Grandview estate purchase completed by Friday. Can you do that? Montgomery smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. Ms. Blackwood, I can do that by Wednesday. He was true to his word. By Wednesday afternoon, Emma was the sole owner of the Grandview estate, a sprawling property of manicured gardens, fountains, and a mansion that looked like it belonged in a European postcard. The previous owners, an elderly couple looking to retire, had accepted the $84 million offer with tears of joy and gratitude. The sale was conducted through a shell corporation, completely anonymous. Daniel and Victoria would walk into their wedding having no idea who actually owned the ground beneath their feet. Emma stood in the master bedroom of her new penthouse in Bellamy Towers, looking at herself in a full-length mirror. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of transformation. Not just physical, though her trainer Marcus had pushed her hard, and she'd lost 15 pounds of water weight and inflammation, but the real change was internal. She stood taller. Her eyes held fire instead of defeat. She'd cut her mousy brown hair into a sleek bob that framed her face. She'd hired a stylist who'd filled her closet with clothes that fit her body as it was now, not as Daniel had demanded it should be. "You look powerful," her assistant Jade said from the doorway. Jade was 26, sharp as a knife, and Montgomery had assigned her to help Emma navigate her new world. "Like you could buy and sell the whole damn city." "Because I probably could," Emma replied, and they both laughed. It still felt strange, that truth, but Emma was learning to inhabit it. Her phone buzzed. A text from the private investigator, Derek Hawthorne. "Found something big. Call me." Emma dialed immediately. "What did you find?" Derek's gravelly voice carried satisfaction. Victoria Blake had a partner, a guy named Russell Chen. They've been working this con together for 6 years. He helps her research marks, provides fake references, even poses as her brother when needed. They split the take 50-50. Russell's in town, staying at the Meridian Hotel under an alias. He's planning to attend the wedding as Victoria's cousin. Does Daniel know Russell exists? Nope. And there's more. Victoria and Russell? They're married, have been for 7 years, never divorced, which means her marriage to Daniel Warren would be bigamy, completely invalid. Emma sank onto her bed, processing this nuclear bomb of information. Victoria wasn't just a con artist. She was Daniel's legal nightmare waiting to happen. If Emma exposed this at the right moment... "I want photos," Emma said, "of Russell and Victoria together. Recent ones. And I want documentation of their marriage certificate. Can you get that?" "Already done. Sending them to your secure email now." Emma hung up and opened her laptop. The photos loaded slowly. Russell and Victoria at a cafe 2 days ago, holding hands across the table. Russell and Victoria entering a motel on the outskirts of town. And there, the marriage certificate. Victoria Ann Henderson, married to Russell Alexander Chen, dated 7 years prior in a Las Vegas chapel. Emma sat back, her mind working through scenarios. She could expose this now, cancel the wedding, humiliate them before they ever made it to the altar. But that felt too quick, too merciful. Daniel and Victoria had humiliated her in that law office, made her feel worthless, treated her like garbage. No. Emma wanted them at that altar. She wanted them in front of all their friends and family. She wanted them thinking they'd won, that they'd gotten away with everything. And then she'd detonate their world so completely, so publicly, that neither of them would ever recover. The wedding invitation sat on Emma's desk, mocking her with its gold embossing. 1 week left, 7 days until Daniel and Victoria's perfect day. Emma picked up her phone and called Montgomery. "I need you to send formal notice to Carter and Associates about Daniel Warren's embezzlement. But don't do it until the day of the wedding, 2 hours before the ceremony starts. Can you do that?" "Deliciously vindictive," Montgomery observed. "Consider it done. And I need you to contact Russell Chen. Tell him I know everything. Tell him I'll pay him $1 million to stand up during the ceremony and object to the marriage. I want him to reveal his marriage to Victoria in front of everyone." Montgomery was quiet for a moment. "Ms. Blackwood, that's going to destroy both of them. Publicly, permanently." "Good," Emma said flatly. "They spat on me. They stole from me. They invited me to watch my humiliation. I'm just giving them what they deserve. Then I'll make the arrangements." The final week passed in a blur of preparation. Emma hired a photographer to document everything. She selected her outfit for the wedding with military precision. A tailored emerald dress that hugged her curves elegantly, paired with diamonds that had belonged to her uncle, worth roughly $3 million. She practiced her entrance, her posture, her expression. She would walk into that wedding looking like the woman Daniel had thrown away, but transformed into someone he could never touch, never hurt, never mock again. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Emma woke at 6, worked out with Marcus, then spent 3 hours with hair and makeup artists who transformed her into someone she barely recognized. The woman in the mirror looked like she belonged on magazine covers, confident, beautiful, wealthy beyond measure. You ready for this? Jade asked, helping Emma into her dress. I've been ready since the moment Victoria spat on my hands, Emma replied. The limousine ride to the Grandview estate took 40 minutes through Saturday traffic. Emma watched the city slide past her tinted windows, her heart rate steady, her breathing calm. She wasn't nervous. She was focused. The Grandview estate looked like something from a fairy tale. White columns, cascading flowers, a fountain that sparkled in the afternoon sun. Guests were arriving in expensive cars, women in designer dresses, men in tailored suits. Emma recognized some of them. Daniel's colleagues, his brother Marcus, his mother Patricia, who'd always looked at Emma with barely concealed disappointment. Emma's driver opened her door. She stepped out, and several heads turned immediately. There were gasps, whispers. Emma walked toward the entrance with her head high, her heels clicking on the marble pathway. Inside, the mansion had been transformed into a wedding paradise. White roses everywhere, silk draping, a string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon. Guests mingled with champagne glasses, their voices a low buzz of conversation that died as Emma entered the main hall. Daniel's brother Marcus saw her first. His jaw literally dropped. Then his mother Patricia, who grabbed his arm and whispered urgently. Then Daniel's colleagues, people who'd attended company parties where Daniel had made jokes about Emma's weight, about her appearance, about her lack of sophistication. They weren't laughing now. They were staring at Emma like she descended from another planet. Emma found a seat near the back. She wanted to observe, not be the immediate center of attention. Not yet. The ceremony was starting in 15 minutes. Right on schedule, Montgomery had texted. The notice about Daniel's embezzlement had been delivered to Carter and Associates, CEO. Police would be waiting at the estate after the ceremony to arrest Daniel for theft and fraud. The quartet transitioned to the wedding march. Guests took their seats. The officiant, a silver-haired man in expensive robes, took his position at the altar. Groomsmen filed out. Daniel's brother Marcus looking uncomfortable, his college friend Brad looking hungover. Then Daniel appeared, and Emma's breath caught despite herself. He looked good in his tuxedo, confident and handsome, the man she'd fallen in love with 12 years ago before ambition had corroded his soul. He scanned the crowd, greeting guests with smiles and waves, and then his eyes found Emma. He froze, literally stopped moving, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and something that might have been fear. He whispered something to Marcus, who shrugged helplessly. Daniel's eyes kept returning to Emma, tracking her like she was a threat he couldn't quite identify. The music swelled. Victoria appeared at the back of the aisle in a wedding dress that probably cost $40,000, all lace and crystals and a train that required 2 attendants to manage. She looked triumphant, victorious, like a general who just won a decisive battle. She started down the aisle, and then she saw Emma. Victoria's step faltered. Her face went white beneath her professional makeup. For a moment, Emma thought Victoria might turn and run, but she recovered, fixing her beauty pageant smile back in place, continuing toward the altar where Daniel waited with growing unease. The ceremony began. The officiant launched into traditional wedding rhetoric about love and commitment and forever. Words that rang hollow in this space, given what Emma knew, what was about to happen. If anyone here has reason why this couple should not be wed, the officiant intoned, speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence. Emma counted heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. Then from the side entrance, a man stood up. Russell Chen, looking nervous but determined, a man who'd just been promised $1 million to tell the truth. I object, Russell said, his voice carrying across the hushed room. Victoria's face drained of all remaining color. Daniel turned, confused. Who the hell are you? I'm Russell Chen, the man said, walking toward the altar. And I'm Victoria's husband. We've been married for 7 years. This wedding is illegal. She's committing bigamy. The room erupted, gasps, shouts, people pulling out phones to record this spectacle. Victoria started shaking her head, words tumbling out in denials, but Russell pulled out papers, their marriage certificate, photos of them together, bank statements showing their shared accounts. You're lying, Victoria shrieked. Daniel, he's lying. I'm not lying, Russell said calmly. We've been running cons on wealthy men for years. You're mark number 4. I'm sorry, man, but she never loved you. She just wanted your money. Daniel looked between Russell and Victoria, his face transitioning from confusion to dawning horror to rage. You're married. You're married. Daniel, I can explain, Victoria began, but Daniel was backing away, shaking his head. And then, as if on cue, sirens wailed outside. Police cars, 3 of them, pulling up to the Grandview estate, officers entering the mansion, making their way toward the altar. Daniel James Warren, one officer announced, you're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. The rest of the Miranda rights were drowned out by chaos. Daniel tried to run, but officers grabbed him. Victoria screamed, demanding lawyers, threatening lawsuits. Guests were recording everything, posting to social media, the disaster unfolding in real time. And Emma sat in her seat near the back, watching it all with cold satisfaction. She stood up slowly, her emerald dress catching the light, and walked toward the altar. Every eye in the room turned to her. Hello, Daniel, Emma said quietly, her voice somehow cutting through the noise. Hello, Victoria. Victoria's eyes widened with recognition and fear. You? What are you? How did you really think I wouldn't find out? Emma asked conversationally. About the embezzlement? About Victoria's real identity? Her marriage to Russell? Her con artist past? About everything? Daniel, handcuffed now, stared at Emma like he was seeing her for the first time. Emma, what did you do? What did I do? Emma's smile was cold. I survived you, Daniel. I survived your cruelty, your affairs, your theft. And then I inherited $3.2 billion from my uncle 3 hours before you divorced me, before you stole our joint account, before Victoria spat on my hands and you laughed. I watched you take everything, and I said nothing because I knew this moment was coming. The room had gone completely silent except for the click of cameras, the whisper of social media posts being typed. Oh, and one more thing, Emma continued. I own this estate now, the Grandview estate. I purchased it 3 weeks ago. You just tried to get married on my property. You're trespassing. Daniel's face crumpled, understanding finally breaking through his arrogance. He'd destroyed his marriage for a con artist. He'd stolen money from his company for a woman who never loved him. He'd thrown away a loyal wife who'd just become a billionaire. And now his life, his career, his reputation, his freedom was destroyed. Get them out of here, Emma told the officers. Press charges for trespassing, too. As police led Daniel and Victoria away, Daniel stunned into silence, Victoria still shrieking denials. Emma turned to face the assembled guests, Daniel's colleagues who'd laughed at her, his family who'd judged her, Victoria's friends who'd enabled her cruelty. The wedding's over, Emma announced, but since you're all here and since I own this property, let me tell you what's going to happen next. I'm founding a charitable organization dedicated to helping women escape abusive relationships and rebuild their lives in Daniel's name. Every news story about his arrest will mention it. And Victoria, she's going to prison for bigamy and fraud. Her face will be on every news channel by tonight. Emma walked back down the aisle, through the stunned crowd, out into the sunshine. Her driver was waiting. Jade stood beside the limousine, holding a tablet showing news alerts already popping up. Local executive arrested at own wedding. Bigamy scandal rocks high society. Mysterious billionaire heiress Emma Blackwood reveals ex-husband's crimes. Emma slid into the limousine, and for the first time in 12 years, she felt completely, utterly free. Where to, Ms. Blackwood? Her driver asked. Emma smiled. Anywhere but here. As the limousine pulled away from the Grandview estate, Emma looked back one last time. She could see Daniel being loaded into a police car, his tuxedo rumpled, his life in ruins. She could see Victoria being questioned by officers, her wedding dress dragging in the dirt. She could see the guests streaming out, phones to their ears, spreading the story that would dominate social media for weeks. Emma felt no guilt, no regret, only the quiet satisfaction of justice served cold. Her phone buzzed. A text from Montgomery. Magnificent performance. Your uncle would be proud. Emma typed back. This is just the beginning, because it was. Emma Blackwood, formerly Emma Warren, formerly the fat wife who was too easy to discard, was just getting started. She had billions to invest, companies to run, a legacy to build. She had women to help, charities to fund, a future to create that would make her uncle proud. Daniel and Victoria had thought they'd crushed her. They'd thought she was weak, worthless, disposable. They'd invited her to watch their triumph. Instead, Emma had crushed them, forever. And as the limousine carried her back toward the city, toward her penthouse and her new life, Emma finally allowed herself to feel it. Not just satisfaction, but genuine happiness. The kind that comes from knowing your worth, from refusing to let anyone diminish you, from rising from the ashes stronger than anyone expected. Daniel had divorced her for being too fat. Victoria had spat on her. They'd stolen everything. But Emma had inherited an empire, and what she did with it would echo far beyond this single moment of revenge. It would change lives. It would build something beautiful. Uncle Theodore had been right. Emma had the character to wield great wealth without corruption, and she was going to prove it one day at a time. The woman who'd signed divorce papers 4 weeks ago no longer existed. In her place stood Emma Blackwood, billionaire heiress, survivor, and the woman who taught two cruel people that underestimating others always came with a price they'd be paying for the rest of their lives.